Hello and welcome to the latest in the Leaders with Ambition podcast series. And today I am absolutely delighted to welcome my guest, Emily Rogers. And Emily is Chief Marketing and Business Development Officer at Norton Rose Fulbright. And it's going to be a fantastic conversation today. What we see is Emily growing up in a relatively small town in New York State, going to a small school, and then heading to the University of Buffalo, which was an amazing experience for her because it exposed her to so much diversity and also to the huge array of possibilities. Very entrepreneurial in spirit, which I think will shine through in the conversation today. And that's seen Emily not only lead and run her own consultancy, but also having her own business with greeting cards design, which I don't know where she gets the time from, but I find that fascinating. She grew up in a really creative environment, which probably explains some of this entrepreneurial spirit, as her father was an artist. So probably no surprise to people when she pivoted from chemical engineering to communication design, which again very much was following her passion for structuring content in a digestive way. She's had a really stellar career, which started at Chadbourne Park, and that was when she joined to do a branding exercise, an internal brand project for 18 months. And 14 years later, through a merger, she is Chief Marketing Business Development Officer. So she's obviously done some amazing work there. And we will touch on so many important points today. And one of the things I think Emily really shines through with Emily is her commitment to the wellness and community initiatives. I know that we're going to talk about that as well today. So without further ado, Emily, over to you to bring your career history to life for us.
No, thank you for having me, Nikki.
A pleasure. Talk us through from when you started university after coming from your smaller town.
I started going to college for chemical engineering. I did a year of that and decided it was a little too boring for me at times. I had kind of pushed away and rejected art as it was a big thing in my family, but decided not to push it away anymore and to just go into it. So I switched to a communication design major. And so that's what I graduated with. I got my first job the day before I graduated from college, and I was kind of the junior designer / assistant at a small design studio in Buffalo. So I got to interact with clients regularly, printers, and just kind of the gamut of different industries. So I worked for lawyers, I worked for different restaurants and stuff, doing like menus, and it was a really good introduction to the workforce.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a great opportunity to really learn from the ground up, isn't it, when you do something like that? And when did you decide that you were going to pivot into law? What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, once I had moved to the New York City area, I had worked at a few different real estate places and done work both in-house at a real estate firm and externally at a design firm that worked for real estate companies. And I really did not want to be pigeonholed as a real estate industry marketing person. And so saw this job posting. I think it was on Creative Hot List. Okay. I don't even know if that's still an active job board, but for a designer to work at Chadbourne Park here in Manhattan. And they wanted to do an internal branding campaign. They did not want to hire an external resource for it. And I had just done the same thing at the real estate place I was at. And I thought, this is exactly the right fit for me. It'll get me out of real estate. And I can see kind of what I want to do after that, kind of planning ahead. So that was how I came to start working at Chadbourne Park.
I love that. And are you a planner? Because I know you're very intentional in your career moves, and you even saying that about wanting not to get pigeonholed in real estate, so thinking about the bigger picture stuff. Have you always been like that?
I would say that I'm ambitious.
Yeah.
I don't know that if you asked me 10 years ago, would I be here today? I would not have said yes. I did not see this in my future. But I think that I'm just really interested in learning. And so whatever is the path that will give me the most opportunity for growth and for learning is what I'm interested in.
Yeah, I love that. So you started doing this internal branding exercise. And at what point did that then turn into you being there for 14 years and getting continuous promotions and development?
I think I was really lucky that I just seeked out the opportunities as they came up. And we had a really lean team at Chadbourne. So, if someone was out for vacation, we had to pick up for each other. And that's how I learned how to work the back end of the website. That was how I got my introduction into Interaction, the CRM system that I'm sure everyone knows and loves. But, then as someone departed the team, I would always kind of go and suggest to my boss or see how open she was to the idea of me taking on a bigger role and managing a more junior person to oversee the whole area. And that's kind of how it happened for me. I've also been very lucky with the sponsors that I've had out of the partners at the firm, that they've always been very vocal about me and suggesting to me that I continue to grow at the firm rather than leaving it.
And how important is it to have those internal sponsors then, Emily? Because I know that's something that you do pay forward a lot, but how important is it for a person in their career to build that?
Can you have a career without them? Yes, you can. But it is definitely something that keeps you at a location. It's definitely the reason that I've stayed here over the years, is that I've built really strong relationships with some people here and some of the partners. They definitely know that they can count on me, and I've consistently delivered for them. And in doing that, they've kind of always stood up for me and always had my back. And I'm able to kind of take bigger risks because they know that my heart is in the right place always. And so if something were to not work out, they understand that the intentions were there and maybe something just didn't work out. But it also leads to some really great successes.
Yeah, I love that. You are a great believer in building effective teams as well, though, aren't you? You've been part of the team earlier on in your career, and that's something that you've really emulated and morphed into a leader. When did you recognize that you'd gone from managing to leading your team?
Well, I think I told you this before. We did a DISC assessment test, and my test results were very specific. So they said that I am a high D, which is like highly dominant, and my other traits are all very low. So the whole result was like, Emily should be in charge of a team. Emily should be leading. And I think it was something that I never wanted to come across as pushy. But once I read the results of the test and on paper, then it was kind of like, well, I should just lean into this and embrace it. And I'm the oldest daughter, so I think that it's like very natural to me. This is how it goes.
That is fantastic. And how do you continue to build your teams then? You know, it's very important for you, isn't it, to have diversity on your team? So how do you make that happen, and how do you give people the opportunity to be able to grow themselves as well?
I think the firm in general is really mindful about professional development and wanting to make sure we keep people here as long as possible. Obviously, with people's growth trajectory, it's not always possible for us to keep everyone, but I think it's really nice to kind of help people see the available opportunities and grow within. I think from a recruiting perspective, we're pretty open to different backgrounds, and we do a pretty thorough interview process and make sure we talk about all the things that are important to us as a firm. Things like growth mindset. We always have people from outside of our team interview potential team members because we just like to have kind of the fit check. And people always ask, if you're from a different team, you always ask totally different questions than we would as the marketing and business development team. And then I would say kind of, we make sure we get all the lawyers involved if it's a really lawyer facing role. And I'm involved in a lot of the hiring. So we just do a thorough vetting process where we emphasize the importance of kind of growth mindset and being open to things through the process.
Do you find, because you came from real estate, that you're more open to people coming out of different backgrounds then, and not necessarily, where possible, sometimes you have to have law firm experience, but when you don't have to, are you more open as a hiring person?
Yeah, I think so. I think it is hard to integrate into a law firm if you don't have law firm experience. Real estate is a pretty easy one to pivot from because it is a partnership also, or most of the firms are, or some of them at least. And so like I came from a different partnership model to this one. And so it was pretty easy for me to learn like the politics of a partnership. But I would say, coming from outside of a law firm, you just need to make sure to build that into the person's onboarding and to be mindful of the fact that they might not be as in tuned with those types of things. So as long as you have that approach going into it, you can make it work.
Go into support and with open eyes is really important. It's that supportive environment. And how was it for you when the merger happened? Because it was a big merger. These mergers are challenging. How did it go? How did it work?
Well, I think I know a lot of people are going through mergers right now. They're hard. And I don't think anyone should say they're not going to be hard. If they're not hard, then you're probably not doing the work to get through it. I remember a few of my sponsors telling me, we just got to sit it out. We just have to sit it out and see how everything shakes out when the dust settles. I mean, I was scared going into it, but I'm really glad that I did just kind of take it as an opportunity to meet new people, see how other things are done at a different firm because, I had only worked at the one law firm at that point. So it was a really good experience to see, a firm that had more practices, a bigger profile in the United States than Chadbourne and Park did. And just getting to meet a lot of those different personalities was a good opportunity. And I kind of figured to myself that I had built these relationships at Chadbourne, and there was no reason I couldn't build more relationships at Norton Rose Fulbright.
That's great, isn't it? And I know you are very artistic in your teamwork as well, aren't you? It's one of the things you told me around you encourage people to get involved in arts and crafts and for people to really to work and collaborate together, not just through the work-based scenario, which I really love.
Yep. So we do arts and crafts on our monthly calls sometimes. We actually have a monthly call later today, which we are not doing arts and crafts on, but we did do one a few weeks ago. I always tell people in advance which supplies they need to bring. I try to do arts and crafts that you can do from office supplies in case the person is in the office and doesn't have access to things. I think it's a really great way for people to be fully engaged in a meeting, which I know people have just as many emails coming at them as I do. And it's really hard sometimes to stop, press pause on your inbox and just pay attention to what you're doing intentionally. And so that's one reason I really like to do the arts and crafts is it really forces you to use your hands and just think and watch what you're doing and spatially. And I think it really does make people kind of like more open to change and to new ideas afterwards. And it's fun. It's just a fun way to connect, which we are disparate across the United States. So some of us have never met in person before. And I think it's really nice to have those kind of water cooler moments as naturally as possible because it's not like you're just bumping into them at the fridge. So it's a good way to do it. And we also do arts and crafts with our partners.
Which is fabulous, isn't it?
Yes, I have an event coming up in a few next week, actually. We do a very fun evening with Emily, and we don't tell the partners what it is in advance. And we have been having them paint arts of like ceramics so that we can give them away as prizes to people who win our Celebrating Success Awards. They also are given a gift card, so it's not like they're just given a tchotchke painted by a partner, but it's really fun. I've never seen a bunch of lawyers be so quiet and dedicated to something.
Still competitive, I imagine. Still competitive.
Yes, still competitive. Some of them are better at arts and crafts than others, but they're all trying really hard. And it really does end up being just kind of a fun night.
I just love a fun night with Emily. I mean, what more could you ask for?
There's always a lot of questions when the invite goes out, but I'm like, just gotta come with an open mind and be surprised.
Yeah, go with the flow. You, as you mentioned there, you do a lot of remote working. Most people are working on remote basis, aren't they? What was the decision to continue to do that when a lot of offices have gone to 3-4 days in the office a week?
Well, so we're tiered differently depending on what your position is at the firm. But for marketing business development, we are fully remote with the opportunity to come into the office as much as we want. Anyone can get an office. In some offices, we do have stationary offices, like I'm sitting in my office right now. But I think the idea behind it was everyone did a really good job and got their work done. We see people getting even more work done. It's easier to kind of log in quickly at night if you need to do something. And it just is a much more flexible arrangement. And so I think it's different for everyone, but for us, it's like a relationship built on trust and just really wanting to be a flexible and dynamic team.
Yeah. And it's worked with tension and attraction strategy, hasn't it? To bring people on board.
I think we are one of the very few firms that is fully remote for MBD. And so, yes, people are excited by that. They're also excited because we do host a lot of engagement events and do different things, the people in the New York office, I've invited them to my house multiple times. I did a cookie exchange at the holidays just to make sure we still are seeing each other and getting to have some quality time together.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Again, it's those moments, as you were saying, isn't it? Almost creating moments, and you have to over-create in some opportunities to get people together. Arts and crafts being a great way to do it. So when you're looking at, obviously, your career trajectory, which has been amazing. I know you've worked incredibly hard to ensure that, and you're very intentional, as we mentioned. How did it feel to get the chief title? Because that must have been something that you set your sights on. At some stage, you're going to start to think, actually, I'm good at what I'm doing, and I can keep developing my career. How did it feel?
I think it felt surreal.
Right.
And I think I still don't remember that I'm the chief sometimes. And I'll be like, doesn't someone need to decide that? And then I'm like, shoot, that's me. I need to decide that. But I'm really lucky that I have a a chief operating officer that trusts me and a management committee and a managing partner that all trust me. And so they've made it a very easy transition. I'm very transparent. So I tell them what's going on, and if it's good or if it's bad, they hear it from me. So I'm not trying to hide anything, but I think that it's been just kind of exciting and fun. And I just look forward to the kind of new projects that we can take on, because I think there's always a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. And I think that's the good thing about a firm that's growing as well, isn't it? The opportunities are growing, you're growing, the firm's growing. Everything's going in the right direction, which is exciting. You want to be part of that, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really good. Talk to me about your time management, because you are a very busy woman. I know you've got a family as well. How do you manage your time effectively, and how do you keep those balls in the air?
I have 3 small kids. They're 12, 9, and 7. And so they obviously are very demanding of my time
You're in
at
the eye of the
times.
storm with your children.
Yeah.
Mine are 21 and 19. It's different.
Yeah. I would say I really do try to make a separation between home and work. I do at home, I have an office that the kids know is off limits, and I try not to spend time in there after, in the hours that they're still awake before bedtime,
Right.
after 5:30. I try really hard on the weekends to limit the amount of work I have to do when they're awake and all that stuff. And then from a day-to-day work time management perspective, I would say I do a lot of time blocking. Just to
Okay.
make sure I have enough time to get stuff done. And then we do have meetings where I will have a team member who I owe some stuff to just kind of babysit me. And I will say, this call is because I need you to babysit me, and we need to work through like these 10 items. I think most of my calls are working calls where we'll just kind of, if we're having a one-on-one update, we just try to check things off the checklist.
Yeah.
And I know what my list of items that I need to ask people about are. So then I kind of like color code them in my notes to different people, so I know who to tell what to. But it's an imperfect way to do it, but it's what has been working for me so far.
Perfectly imperfect, which makes it
Yes.
work. That's what I love. Yeah. I love
Yeah.
the fact that you've got, the assistants again around you, and being vulnerable and saying to people, sometimes I do need help. I think that's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And creating that safe space for people to be able to say it to you, because you're role modeling that behavior. And I think that's the biggest thing, is being able to role model behavior so that people feel comfortable to be able to do it themselves.
Yeah, I always want to be very honest with the team. We talk about struggling with imposter syndrome. I have it just as much as anyone else has it. Uncertainty sometimes of like, if you have a sick kid, what are you going to do? How are you going to cover for it? I try to make sure that the people on my team know that I go through the same struggles that they do.
Yeah.
And so, share what works for me. Doesn't mean it will work for them, but it's just an idea.
Yeah, that's great, isn't it? And you talked to me about this, your commitment to the wellness and community initiatives. Can you shed some light on why that's such a passion for you, and how you've managed to do that in the firm as well?
Yeah, I think from a firm perspective, we do a lot of things that are community oriented or wellness oriented. I am the chair of the wellness committee, and we have been able to launch a bunch of different initiatives to, for mental health, physical health, financial health, etc. I think it's important because a good client experience starts with a good employee experience. And so you can't deliver a consistently good client experience if you have unhappy people throughout the firm. And so I think it's important for us to think about that, not just on a like individual team basis. I care about everyone at this firm. It's not just the marketing and business development team. And we've been able to do some really fun things. We do, fitness challenges across the entire firm where we'll end up having like half the firm working out and logging their minutes to see which team is going to take the prize. I just met with the IT team yesterday because they're helping me automate our Microsoft Forms so that we can kind of have a little leaderboard of which team is working out the most.
I bet people get so competitive with that as well. I can just imagine.
Yes, they do. And then you get bragging rights for a while, which is helpful. But, I think it's just important to give back also. I mean, we're a huge part of our communities. And so one thing that we do that I think is really special is our Clear the List program. We run it every August. And so we raise money in the firm to fill teachers' wish lists from Amazon. And so last year we raised about $100,000, and we sent out gifts to over 400 teachers fulfilling their wish lists. And so each member of the firm is able to submit, I think, 3 to 4 lists of teachers that they know. And so it's really nice because it is impacting the communities in which each of us live in. It's not just one community that our offices are in. And it's people that we know that need help because we know that teachers need help buying school supplies. That's just an example of just, one thing that we do, but there's a lot of other fun things we do together. We have a swag day every year. This year, I think it's in October, where you're supposed to come into the office in your Norton Rose Fulbright swag. And
Fabulous.
so, as someone who's worked here for a long time, I have a lot of Norton Rose Fulbright swag. And so I told the team the other day, the only thing I'm missing is pants. Adding pants to the gear store so that I can get pants and come in. I will be wearing my Norton Rose Fulbright t-shirt, a hat. I have 2 pairs of shoes. I have some very nice things and some very tacky things, but they come in like fully swagged to just kind of celebrate the firm and have fun together.
That is fabulous. And I just can imagine people walking into offices and everyone just looking, going, oh my gosh, they love their firm.
Yes. It look a little bit like we're dressed in costumes, but it's okay.
Talk to me about the importance that you think about networking in your industry, because as we know, you are people driven. A lot of the people in the marketing, business development community do like to learn off other people as well. And that's a great way of doing it internally, as you are doing. But also there are networks out there to help and support people. How do you encourage that? How do you do it yourself?
Well, I am definitely an extroverted introvert. So I do not enjoy networking very much at all, but I do try to do it every once in a while. I've also found that the longer you stay at one place, people will come to you. So that's nice.
Very good. That happens. Yeah.
But we do send people to different conferences to get out there and learn different things. So, every year as we're going through the budgeting season, I like to ask people, think about the conferences you might want to attend next year. Please don't limit yourself to legal conferences. There's so many conferences for communication, design, business development that are not legal that we can still learn a lot from. I find it's harder for big firms to go to the legal marketing ones just because they are, there's such a huge range of sizes of firms, and a lot of them are really geared towards the middle to smaller size firm, which is great. I think it's super beneficial for those firms, but it's less beneficial for us because a lot of times they're talking about things that maybe we already do because we just have access to more resources.
Right.
And so that's one reason that I like to look outside of it. I'd also love to create some sort of thing, a networking thing for bigger firms so that we can kind of learn from each other. So that's my appeal to my colleagues at other big firms.
That's great. And do you have a group of peers at the moment at CMBDOs where you feel that you've got that psychological safety with them? Is it people that you've grown up with throughout your career?
Yes. I do have a few different close friends that are at different firms that I do feel comfortable kind of like, what are you seeing in this area? I think this thing might be dead. What do you think about it? And so it's nice to kind of, go out to dinner, have fun, and ask some questions like that.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? I think it's with such a people-led industry, and particularly in law and what you're doing at the moment, it's good to have those people to pull on, isn't it? And to have conversations with. And what about personal brand then? I know that's something you and I have talked about in the past about how important it is, not just in your line of work, but for you to encourage the partners in your firm to build that personal brand that is authentic. How do you go about creating a platform for that, for yourself and for people?
Well, it's funny. We actually just had a presentation last week that I gave with one of my colleagues about building your personal brand.
Okay, that was very timely then.
A lot of it is talking about, what is a brand and why do you need to build one? And so I think it was beneficial. We ended up having about 150 people register for our training. And so we talked about the fact that everyone has a brand. If you're not building it, someone else is building it for you. And so it's what people say about you when you're not in the room, right? Yeah. And so what do you want people to say? We talked a lot about what do you want to be seen as, and also what your actions at work might actually be telling you. Because I find that's where there's a big disconnect is, a lot of times people will think that, certain form of communication means one thing where the receiver might be perceiving it completely differently. So we went through a bunch of examples on that and just kind of giving both sides to make sure people understand that, like, yes, you're sending Teams messages to follow up on something, but like what you're not realizing is that the person receiving it might be thinking that you're not prioritizing things properly and that you don't understand that they have more on their plate than you do on yours. And so just kind of things like that. I do think it's incredibly important to build a brand for yourself, because if not, I mean, it is being built for you, right? Like you want to be seen as someone who is delivering quality content, good communicator, responsive, all those things. And so what can you do to live authentically, but also be kind of telling that story about yourself.
And I think that's a really good point, actually, that if you're not building it, somebody else is definitely building it with their perception and lens on it. And that's really dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And your brand needs to be authentic. Like you can't say you want to be something that you're just
Yeah.
not, because it's going to feel fake.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be impossible to deliver consistently.
That's such a good point, actually, because you've also got to have this consistency, haven't you, around everything you do in your work or your personal life. If you're trying to particularly if you're in work when you're building teams, people need to see consistency from you, don't they? So that you haven't got this kind of up and down mentality where people don't know where they stand. It's so important to be able to deliver that.
Mhm.
What would you say then are some of the biggest challenges at the moment facing CMBDOs in law firms?
Well, I would say that the rapid increase of technology is a challenge. And with that comes the buzzwords that everyone throws around. So sifting through who is actually using AI in a new and exciting way that can actually help me, and which companies are just solving a problem that nobody has. Because there's plenty of companies that have a solution to something that is not a problem for me. I think that's always challenging, but just kind of, doing your due diligence, making sure your team is involved. I think the other big challenge we have right now is, it's not even right now, it's always is retention. And so recruiting and retention is hard. And I think we also need to work on shifting to the next generation's wants and needs from a workplace. And so, rather than saying, well, when I was a, assistant, I had to sleep in the office overnight, people don't do that anymore. And we just need to be accepting of that and kind of change lanes and figure out what's going to work for today's environment. But I think people management is a huge portion of any CMO's job. And so kind of flexing is important to do. And it's not an easy task always.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was chatting to somebody yesterday about that very same thing, that, you get to your position and actually a lot of it is people management, it's stakeholder management, it's managing political situations. It's not, sometimes you think your work is still there, but you have all of this, 80% of your time is taken up with people, which is fascinating when you think about the amount of work that you do in your career to get to that senior level.
Right.
Then what would you say has been your biggest highlight in your career then? Because there's been so many, hasn't there, along the way? What would you class as being your biggest highlight?
I guess, something that really stands out to me would be before I became chief, we did a partner retreat, and it was the first partner retreat that we had done in quite some time. And so since before COVID.
Yeah.
And so we just took your typical partner retreat and flipped it on its head.
Wow.
And introduced a choose your own adventure type of agenda. That's where we introduced wellness as a key point for the firm. And I just remember so many people were like, people aren't going to be interested in that. People aren't going to like this. And the feedback afterwards was just so good. The partners were thrilled. They said they loved the changes. They liked that it wasn't just a bunch of panels. They liked that there were workshops. They liked that they did a sleep meditation. It was just a lot of different opportunities to connect in different ways. We brought in Flair from, I don't know if you remember, from Office Space. So everyone had pins that people were collecting and putting on their lanyards, just really trying to figure out new and creative ways to get people to talk to each other that don't normally talk. And so that was one. But then, we did a conference this last year and we wanted to change it, right? We don't want to do the same thing 2 years in a row. So what are we going to do differently this year? Where was there opportunity for change? And so we still kept a lot of wellness aspects to it, but we introduced more networking. People demanded that Flair come back. They wanted Flair. So we did that. But we also, at the very first night with 350 partners, we played High-Low Buffalo, which was a speed networking game where each person had to say hi, this is who I am. The low was, this is the problem I solve for clients. And the buffalo is one random fact about themselves. And so they were paired in teams. And then they would rotate around a room to meet 10 different groups of people in 50 minutes. And
it's amazing. What fun
people were thrilled. People were thrilled. It was just, and going into it, people were like, I don't understand this. I don't know what you guys are thinking. And then once they were in the room and we had the facilitators and we had stopwatches going and people got really into it, partners who were paired together were like, I didn't even know all these random facts about this person. And business came out of it because they were able to figure out how to quickly talk about each other. So, I think those are two really big wins for us, because I think there's a way you can do a partner retreat or any big conference like that that's just kind of a set it and forget it type of agenda. And I love the fact that the team is excited to try new things. Everyone comes with new ideas and new opportunities. It's not just me. People are coming up with a bunch of different creative ideas, and it's just really fun to get together and do that.
That is so good. And they're probably all thinking, oh my gosh, this is part of a night of fun with Emily. They don't know what to expect.
The best part, right? You never know what to expect.
Yeah. And they're rolling with it, which is even more exciting, isn't it?
Well, it'll at least be fun. That's what I like people to know.
But I think you have to do that, because I think everybody's got seriously hard working jobs. They're doing long hours. How do you differentiate the firm as well from lots of other firms? And it sounds like the way that you guys are working together as a partnership group as well is trying to do that and be different and differentiate yourselves. And, you look at the remote working, you look at the ways that you're trying to have fun. This all goes into the retaining and attracting people into the firm as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Very important.
Yeah, I mean, we practice what we preach. We are a people first firm, and that means clients first too. And so, it's been a really rewarding thing to see everyone just embrace it and not try to be something we aren't.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? And so what about words of wisdom, Emily, might be a chemical engineer now, for all we know, to where you are today? What words of wisdom would you give to yourself and others coming through?
Well, so the one thing that I always have on my wall is a Steve Martin quote that just says, be so good they can't ignore you. And so I think one important thing is to just do a good job. I think if you are consistently delivering a good job, people will notice.
Yeah.
And then the other part would be just be authentic. I tried to fight it. I tried to go into chemical engineering, and it was not true to me. And so I knew it was not going to be a long-standing career for me. And so I think that I've kind of found what I enjoy doing, and, I don't get the Sunday scaries. I get excited about going to work on Mondays, and I'm really thankful for that.
I think that's great words to end on, Emily. Be authentic and don't get the scaries on a Sunday night. Find somewhere that you love and you're passionate about. You never have to work a day in your life, do you? Which is the beauty of it all.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably still a few days where I'm feeling like it's work, but yeah.
24/7. But I have to say, Emily, thank you so much for your time. It's been such a pleasure talking to you today, and really hearing about you as a person and how you've helped to shape the firm and continuing to do so moving forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.